What's going on? Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Mic check, mic check. Sounds like we're good, but someone can just give me the okay. Hello, but what's going on, my guy? FedEx? Actually, I did forget about FedEx. Oof. I remembered about it this morning that they had earnings, and then I forgot about it. Ew, that's a disgusting breakdown. So we are filling the gap, which was already pretty much end. No, we just stopped just shy of the gap fill today. So that gap fill is completed now, pretty much entirely here. I would watch for the main support level that I'm watching for continuation down would be if we break below 158. If we break below 158, then when you're going to get your continuation, and we're going to continue to bleed out. So 158 is that marquee level. You break below 158, I would trade this down towards 155, which would be about another $3 continuation, and we'll need to see how much more aggressive this gets. Obviously, the fact that as I'm speaking right now, we just cracked that 158 level of support. So that does tell me that we should rather see more continuation down towards that 155 mark. All right. So watch to see. I mean, the 150 is trying to hold as a support for short term right now. We did crack it. We'll see if we get the continuation below it. Obviously, a lot of things are going to change by morning. I'm sure conference call is going to be a big factor as well. And as you see, it's kind of attempting to recover, but the guidance is likely going to be the bigger key component here in terms of the holiday season. How are they going to guide moving forward is going to be that big question mark. If for any reason we do end up pretty much recovering this entire move, then I'm watching to see if we break back above 167. Above 167, then that would particularly trade right back up towards 172 half is where I see continuation on this one. All right. So that's just giving you the upside and the downside of that. All right. Richard, what's going on? Time to get into Tesla calls. I'm not going to lie, I'm not pretty much in the camp of trying to get into Tesla calls, particularly just yet. With this market volatility, I'm kind of staying away from trying to long things as opposed to trying to short into, I want to say those names that not necessarily have gotten that downside action that we pretty much anticipate, right? I can point to a main name like Apple, which I'll get to the chart here shortly after I kind of go through SPY. But Apple's a name like I actually want to look towards shorting Apple, not necessarily buying. I think at this point in time, I mean, you're kind of scouting the names that you want to buy long term, not necessarily trying to swing these names back to the upside. More so, a lot of pretty much the market in which having a bear market, right, is that more times than not, your short is likely going to end up paying out more times than trying to long something. So I'm not in the camp of necessarily trying to long something unless it's a day trade, particularly, especially a name like Tesla, because I'm not trying to get face ripped, especially trying to go long and then we have the market dump on us. So I'll take a look at the chart though. Also, we'll see what's pretty much going on with that. But just to give you hindsight of what my strategy is, what I'm looking for, is I'm more so looking to pretty much short the strength in names that I think are still relatively overvalued. All right, to answer that more directly. All right, Prachi, good afternoon. If I can take a look, a Lobo, when the correlation between FedEx and retail holiday sales going to go up, that's going to be pretty much the big question mark at Lobo. If I really had a magic ball to tell you, I believe that the fact of FedEx getting beat down as much as it has, I was more so in the camp that we should end up seeing this recover and likely end up trading up towards 172. But that would be a big question mark on whether they really give the clear light signal that the market wants to hear, in which it's a healthy holiday season for them, or are they actually struggling in reaching demand and having issues internally? All right. So that's a big question mark, but that's why I say levels are pretty much the more key component here. 158, 155 to the downside, as opposed to the upside here. I believe you have upside up until 172 is what I'm looking at for the meantime. All right. But that'll be something I think we'll pretty much reanalyze tomorrow morning on the back end of that conference call and some analyst ratings. All right. Let's see what else. Netflix, nice gap from the morning. I will actually cover that Netflix chart. That's actually something really interesting about that Netflix chart that had me questioning. I think at this point, we're losing hope of having a potential Christmas rally. I mean, let's all be honest. I think we're all losing hope at this point in terms of saying that the market is just bleeding out and there's not much sign of a meaningful reversal to have a Christmas rally. But I will point out pretty much a little bit of a theory in terms of that Netflix chart and how it may end up correlating going into the end of the year. All right. So that's something I will cover. And Prachi, checking on EMPH, I will definitely check on that for you. I think Energy actually had a phenomenal day today for the most part. So that is something that I will double check for you as well. Let me actually get real quick into SPY, and then we will pretty much move on to these individual tickers. Take a look at some major levels basically across the board. All right. But as we basically look into SPY, overall structure, we can basically see a nice little trend line support off of that black line that's going there. We ended up breaking that off of the back end of Powell. Those of you that pretty much are looking for when we broke structure or that overall uptrend, and we have basically been in declining mode, and we ended up filling that gap fill that's dating back towards November 10th, or right. So that gap fill ended up being completed. Let's see if we can end up getting a nice little retracement. We had a nice little bounce. I want to see if we can pretty much re-enter what was that gap fill at that 390 spot basically. And we were not able to hold at the high of the day here today, particularly to kind of get a nice little follow through. That's my concern more so. But I'm more in the camp of saying that we should end up getting at least one more leg to the downside, one more meaningful leg to the downside. And I am looking to trade down towards 375. That's essentially what I am looking at in terms of gearing towards. I believe we have about another $5 move to the downside, and I want to see if this little base that we had prior, right, in terms of our prior little bear market rally that we've had here so far, can we end up finding the support at 375 to give us a short-term bounce? Keyword short-term, right? That could be a matter of days. It could be maybe a week to give us a potential Christmas rally. But 375 is the level that I want to see if we can hold. Maybe give us a few days of a little bit of a relief off of this bleeding that we've had, and then get continuation right back below 375. But nonetheless, that 375 level beyond between September up until what is this, November, that was basically the level in which we've teetered between breaking down, testing as resistance, rejecting as basically pointing towards most recently August 18th. Again, support test November 2nd, right off that 375, and then basically launching right off of that for continuation of the bear market rally that we just witnessed. So that's pretty much just giving you that hindsight of what I'm looking at is that 375 mark, and I believe that we can trade back up as high as 386 is what I'm looking at towards upside if we see some relief in multitudes of days. All right. So that's just hindsight in terms of that. Otherwise, we break below 375, then I believe we're going to end up trading down towards 372 really quickly. And below 372, that'll take us down to 367 is my next pivotal level. All right. So that's looking into SPY Lobo. Let me actually get right into your Netflix chart. Let me just catch up on some things. Christmas rally 2021 never happened, more like Xmas slaughter. It does feel like a slaughter right now. Going into the end of the year, that's a sign. That's the thing. There's no sign of relief right now. Even though today, yeah, we had a positive day more so for the Dow, there's not much saying that we should end up having a relief or a Christmas rally more so towards the end of the year. But that's where things, looking at different individual names, yeah, you have some names that pretty much have some nice little support levels that we're basing off of, and that does give me a little bit of a hope if we can hold these current levels that we ended up bouncing off of today for some marquee names. One being a name like Netflix. Overall structure, you can basically see I've drawn out a nice little ascending channel action. But what's more so important is that black line that goes left to right. That black line actually is more significant, in which we had a nice little continuation, little support test dating back towards the end of October. We had a nice little base yet again, in which gave us a nice little rally end of November. And we're basing right here again at the end of the month here into the end of December here. And we bounced pretty significantly off of that 280 mark. Now, given the fact that, okay, we had a support test the end of October, support test end of November, is this going to be a meaningful support test yet again going into the end of December here? Which, yes, if we have some kind of relief, I definitely see the fact that, yeah, Netflix could have a little bit of an upside and it could take it up towards the median of this channel, in which that would be a nice little retest of that 200, that 299, 300 mark before we get continuation right back down. All right. So that's why I say it is a meaningful support. We've already basically seen continuation or support test rather towards the end of the month in October, November, and now let's see if December is a question mark or in terms of getting the same result, or do we see the opposite and we just melt right back down below that 280 spot. All right. So that's definitely one I'm going to look at. If we can hold, get nice continuation here above 290, I do believe this is going to trade up towards 301 is where I have resistance, and that'll be also be the median of this little ascending channel action that we have. Otherwise, going into tomorrow, look to see if we end up breaking down below 286, and then obviously you see the floor, but below that 286, I have a little bit of a meaningful support around 283 half is what I'm looking at. In which case, maybe we could put in a potential higher low if that be the case. All right. So those are the pivotal levels in terms of Netflix. Another one that's kind of a little bit of a similar scenario, and Prachi, I will get to EMPH for you in just a second. But another one to point out too is is Microsoft. Microsoft's another one that bounced off a pretty pivotal support, basically dating back towards the end of September, which that black line going left to right has been a meaningful and pivotal kind of support or level of resistance, more so for the past 3 to 4 months here. So if you can obviously see the bigger gap that ended up happening right off of that 280 mark, that was dating back towards October 26th when we had earnings, and that was the level that we last pretty much reached as the high of the day. There was that 238 mark. So I want to see again. Does the 238 hold? Another one that has relative meaningful support for the past 3 months. Can we end up seeing a nice sort of follow through off an attempted reversal on the support? Now, levels I'd be watching, watch for continuation above 243 half. We get a continuation over 243 half. I would be targeting this up to towards 247 for our short term resistance. Otherwise, looking for basically half of this retracement to hold 240 half is what I'm going to be looking at if we get any kind of blood tomorrow and see if this ends up having some kind of relative strength more so. All right. But this is another one kind of equivalent to Netflix yet again, just giving you the broader landscape. They have meaningful support levels that they both bounce off of today. Can we get a follow through off of that? Or do we break right back down, in which case now we have no hope of any kind of individual names giving us a sense of a Christmas rally to actually exist this year? All right. So that's another one. I can also pretty much look. Actually, let me actually look at MPH before I even go through any other names particularly. But Prachi, I will say you pretty much ended up getting a nice little breakdown. Particularly, I believe that this is more so a breakdown retest that you're basically on the cups of flirting with, in which case I don't believe that there's much upside left. I would say in terms of resistance, that overhead that you want to look to be shorting, I would watch 313. 313 is that overhead basically resistance I want to particularly short at is 313, and then you look to take out the low of the day here today. But that's the most significant level I can see for the upside. If you break back above 313, I would be targeting this up towards 321, but that would be a very big if towards breaking over that 313, which should be rather heavy resistance for the moment being. All right. And in terms of the pretty much intermediate support, I want to say in terms of today, I believe that support was right around that 302 mark is what I'm looking at for that support where you close that. So it's going to be rather pivotal if you end up trying to break out, maybe more so above 307. Do you end up coming right back down to 302 and retest this as support that we close that and then fall through is going to be the bigger question mark. All right. But overall, I believe the uptrend is broken. I believe 313 should be your overhead resistance, and continuation down should pretty much be indicated. All right. Let's see what else is down the list to pretty much take a look at. Herbie, DKNG, I haven't not looked at this chart in quite a while, but I will say just looking at the daily, this chart is absolutely disgusting. If I were to tell you in terms of what level to pretty much keep an eye on, it would be right around this 1132 mark. That's probably the best case scenario I can likely say for you, Herbert. 1132, wait for it to get down there. And particularly if you're looking to get shares or if you're looking to get into calls, I believe you look to get some pretty far expiration, more so. But 1132, that's pretty much the very marquee level that I would say. All right. Let's see what else there is. Yeah, that's not a particularly good looking chart though. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, it looks like it's pretty much in free fall mode. But if I were to nibble at this, 1132 would likely be where I would preferably like shares more so than trying to play options with this. All right. Let's see what else there is that we could take a look at. Richard, if we end year at 375, what that do for next year with identical yearly candles? I expect continuation to the downside. I'll be completely honest with you, especially looking at names that I was just talking about that I'm more strategized towards shorting overvalued names. I can literally point to a name, especially like a name like Apple. Obviously, we see Tesla rolling over the past few weeks, and it's going to get into value. More so likely once we see it pushing more towards $100. But Apple is another name that also needs to reach that $100 mark as well. So once you start to see these bigger names that more so carry heavy weight in the market, and that's basically pointing out towards Tesla, Apple, and Microsoft, a lot of those three big names actually still have a lot more downside. So even if we get towards 375 going into the new year, I expect further downside more so. And apparently, once we're going to hear from the Feds yet again, which they last indicated that the bigger question mark is that there's no sign of relief in terms of the Fed rate hikes happening. As long as there's no sign of that pretty much ending, then we are going to get continuation to the downside. So that's a bigger another reason in terms of not holding at that 375 level going into the new year. All right. Let's see what else to take a look at. Annette, you mentioned UNH. Let's take a peep at UNH. Let's see what's going on with her. I believe healthcare's actually been okay. No, that's not been doing so well. All right. So looking in terms of the daily here, what I'm pretty much have illustrated is a little bit of an ascending triangle action is what I'm looking at. I would be implied to pretty much say that you're going to get a support test down towards 512 is what I'm looking at for support test. So watch for continuation down towards 512. If you can pretty much nibble at this, ideally I would say a spread if it's feasible in terms of liquidity. But 512 would be that support test, and you would watch to see if that holds off of this trendline support for a reversal back to the upside. All right. So 512 is going to be that major level that I watch. Otherwise, of course, more minuscule, you're watching to see if you can hold this Friday low that we had, that we put in at 515.72. But the ultimate support test in terms of holding this overall uptrend and getting continuation back to the upside is that 512 level. All right. I think that's the best case in terms of saying where I would want to nibble at this in terms of getting the reversal back to the upside. But the past few days, it's looking rather bloody in terms of trying to catch a knife here. All right. Let's see what else to take a peep at. Nike. The way that actually sounds a little bit looks like it got slaughtered. No, it's not that bad. I mean, Nike doesn't look that bad. I think it's holding pretty well for what it is right now. I mean, we'll see if it holds. I will say the most glaring thing that actually stands out to me is this gap fill below this $100 mark. It's about $1 gap fill, particularly. So that's going to be a rather big question mark if this does end up rolling over into their earnings call. That'll be the big question mark, obviously. So watch this below that $100 mark. If you break below $100 here, that's when you have another gap fill here below, which is going to be rather disgusting to fill this one. Below 96, that's about a near $3 gap fill that you're looking to the downside, and that is disgusting. But in terms of upside here, if we hold this after hours action as we're up nearly about 1.5% roughly, I would say you can take this back up towards right about this 106 half is what I'm looking at for some minor resistance. If you get above 106 half, I believe this can trade up towards 108 is what I'm looking at for continuation. All right. But big question mark if it holds these gains or not. Let's see what else. Diego, I actually did cover Tesla. Did I actually cover Tesla? No, I take that back. I did not cover Tesla. I do take that back. Bigger pretty much illustration here that you can see is that we have a nice little descending channel action. And the bigger question mark that has been relatively is looking at the median of this little descending channel. So if you actually look at the dotted blue line basically in the middle that goes down towards that slant, what's basically been pretty much teetering that support or not rather changing the trend in terms of an uptrend or downtrend. Right now, it's still pointing to the downside. I would watch for relative resistance going in towards tomorrow here. If we can end up breaking above this 141 mark, I believe you can trade this up to about this 145, and above 145, your next level that you're watching for this overall trend change would be right around 149 half to pretty much get to the upper band of this descending channel. All right. Otherwise, if you're looking for continuation down, I believe you're looking to trade this down below this 137 mark. You're going to watch for this to trade down towards 132 tomorrow, and that's going to be rather disgusting. All right. It won't be as bloody as today, more so, but trading down to 132 tomorrow, that's still about another, what, relative $5 to the downside, in which, yeah. If you're holding puts overnight, you're gonna probably wake up happy because it'll likely be down maybe what $3 or so if we get a gap down. But I don't expect it to replicate today's downside. Is more so what I wanted to express. All right. But support is 132 is what I'm watching for the next leg to the downside. Let's see what else. Prachi, you mentioned Meta. Let's take a peep at Meta. Let's see what's going on with it. So another one that I have a nice little descending channel action. Obviously, the median in the middle basically just tells you that trend change where we hold support or we change into resistance for a downtrend continuation. But we basically been trading in a rather tight range with Meta. As I kind of just extend this just a bit, this has been one hell of a range that we've been trading in, and I do believe that there is more so a relatively a bigger move incoming from Meta. It's just going to be a question mark of when that actually takes place. So you can basically see if I kind of zoom in as much as I can here, possibly in that red shaded area. This to me is basically just chop, even though it's more so on the daily. That's why I say it is chop because it is off the daily here, so it is a bigger macro perspective you're looking at. But that is basically indicating that there's either going to be a big move to the upside or there's going to be a breakdown to the downside. Now, I would more so favor the fact that we're going to get the breakdown to the downside here, but that does not include the fact that, yeah, we could trade back to the top of the end of this range here, being that 124 mark, and then key levels I'm watching 126 and then 128 for continuation. But then, even if we trade to that 124 mark, if we get a rejection at the top end of the range, then guess what happens? We trade right back to the downside of the range, and then we're going to be watching to see if we can hold this 113 mark. And if we break below 113, what's pretty much your downside in terms of your median and also your gap fill that's pretty much plausible here is trading this down towards this 98 mark. And that'll also be your median and also your gap fill completion. All right. So I would wait particularly to see a, if you break over 124, or B, you break below 113, I think that likely gives you the bigger potential range in terms of playing the direction of this. All right. Otherwise, you're likely in for just a cluster of some minimum type of price action, being that it's just chopping within this box, trading from the bottom, trading to the top. All right. All right. Let's see what else to move on. Nike now up about 2%. Let's take a peep. Let's glance back at that. Let's see what's going on here. All right, so that 108 level that I was watching, it looks like it might actually smack. Wow, that's actually rather impressive. That 108 level is going to be impressive here. If we get continuation, I think the more meaningful thing that you're watching here going into tomorrow, it's going to be this little minuscule gap fill. That's going to be over 109.62, and that basically completes right around 110 and a quarter. So that's probably what I would say for continuation. I don't believe it trades above that 110 mark, if I'm being honest with you. But if for any reason that we do, I will be watching for this to trade up towards 112 half is what I will particularly say. But I have a hard time believing it trades over 110 in terms of seeing a regression off of this little after hours price action. All right. Let's see what else so we can get towards the end of this live here. Uncle Philly, let's see. Apple, let's take a peek better. Apple is actually one of the names that I was actually discussing in terms of saying that it's not necessarily overvalued, but it's not entering into the value zone just yet. It is still relatively overpriced, is what I would say. For right now, I do believe that there's quite a lot more downside in terms of Apple. Now, what would I be watching for? I would actually particularly be watching for the median of this sort of descending channel action that I have. I want to particularly look to see if I can get this as a short right around this 136 mark. So that's about another $3.50 move to the upside if we get any kind of follow through on this little reversal today. I want to see if I can get into a short at that 136 mark and see if we get the rejection off of the median of this descending channel. That's more so what I'm interested in. I don't believe you particularly break over 136 if for any given reason, and that's why there's always a plausible to say that there's two sides to a story here. If we break over 136, then I would be looking for this to trade up towards this 140 and a quarter spot. But 136 is more so my strategy in terms of saying, all right, I want to see the rejection of the median, and I would trade this right back down towards breaking the low of today's price action. All right. But that 136, to answer your question directly, that's the bigger main concern of this level that you want to see to pretty much play over to the long side or to pretty much reshort this. All right. In terms of next level breaking below today's low, I will be watching for this to trade down towards 126 half is going to be my next pivotal level that I want to see in terms of my support. All right. So that kind of wraps up. Kind of flew through quite a bit of charts here. We'll be keeping an eye on the Netflix, not Netflix, but keeping an eye on the FedEx and also the Nike chart going tomorrow. Let's see if we get a nice continuation play. It's just a little skeptic trying to say call out the more extreme levels because we're still waiting on the earnings call to actually go through and see what their guidance is, especially a name like FedEx going into holiday season here. But then that's why you also have analyst ratings as well going into tomorrow morning. That's like going to be a little bit more of an impact as well. So I think there's something else to pretty much be analyzed tomorrow morning. So I will definitely look to see if I take a look at that and look to see if there's any continuation play if the levels change by morning. All right. But other than that, I will wrap up today's session. I will leave you guys with that. Let's see if we have some more blood on the street tomorrow. It's already been what a bloody few days that we've had. So be prepared. I would say the bigger thing is just keeping your positions light as of right now until we get some follow through on maybe the reversal that ended up happening today. That's why I would say keep it light. If we get a follow through on today's little reversal, we see some meaningful moves to the upside. I think that's when you can kind of trade your normal size in terms of day trades. But for right now, with the volatility that's on deck that we've seen the past 4 days, if that re-enters back into tomorrow's equation, that's when I say keep it light because obviously you don't want to get forced out of positions going into the holiday. Keep it that money and save it for the holidays, for your gifts, your presents, for your family. And that's what I would say to give you a little bit of perspective. All right. But other than that,